I drugged the top scholar hoping to sleep with him but failed. Then I jumped into the river just to frame him for a frivolous crime. To ensure his path to the imperial examination isn't cut off, he had to agree to marry me, a village girl. By the time I transported into this novel, I had already successfully forced him into marriage. In the book, I'm portrayed as a fool but also a born seductress, a stunner. I'm the fated or 18 role in this male-oriented novel, naturally possesses strong desire, and can't be ruined no matter how the eye was played. So the male lead, Xiating, vent his hatred on me through the actions, humiliating me. This hatred, once unleashed, lasted for 10 years, until I was tortured to death by his other women in the backyard. My wealthy father, in order to marry me off to him, had to become a pawn. He ended up being murdered, begging on the streets. Even my genius younger brother was turned into a fool, freezing to death by the side of a ditch. That's how my inexplicable life in the book ended. Thank goodness, I arrived 3 days before the wedding. There's still time to sort everything out. Father, I don't want to marry Xiating anymore, I blurted out as soon as I woke up. What? Dad was taken aback. Dad, why are you so surprised? Do you really want to be the father-in-law of Xia the scholar? Nonsense. Dad was furious, his beard bristling. Dad is worried about you. You've been practically killing yourself over Xia the scholar for the past 2 years. Why the sudden change of heart? That day, when he rejected me in front of so many people, when he cut ties with me, I've decided to completely give up on him. I mean it. Really? Dad carefully observed my expression. Seeing that I was indeed sincere, he breathed a sigh of relief. But we don't need to rush to break off the engagement. We can't make Xiating feel like he's been wronged. We need to choose the right time. It would be the best if we could not only break off the engagement smoothly, but also let him remember our kindness. First forcing him into marriage, then retract. Given Xiating's petty nature, he would definitely retaliate fiercely against me. He is the male lead in male-oriented fiction. There's no point in confronting him head-on. So, I said, passing the imperial exam is only a matter of time for him. By the end of next autumn, he would surely be among the top scorers and be granted nobility. With his looks and talent, he'd probably find a higher ladder to climb soon. This engagement would then become nothing but a burden. In the original book, it's written that even when I've already married Xiating, there are constantly noble ladies eager to marry him as concubines, princesses, consorts, widows, or dowager consorts. His popularity with women is unparalleled. You're right, it's been a while since I've seen you so clear-headed and articulate, Dad said. He is moved by my words. Rest assured, I won't make the same mistake again, I assured him gently. Dad soon set off on a distant journey to handle matters for the county magistrate. I tidied up and went to Xiating's house. At the door, I called out to him, Xiating. Xiating looked a bit flushed due to fever. When he saw me, there was a hint of disdain in his eyes, but he still politely greeted me, Miss Liu. Because of his fever, his voice was hoarse, but hearing it sent a shiver down my spine. All I could think of was to soar with him above the clouds. Suddenly, my knees feel weak, and then a tingling sensation swept over me as if I'd been electrified. Child Xia. Soon as I heard my sound, I swiftly covered my mouth. The seductive charm I was born with, the 18 quality I naturally possess. It's sickeningly flirtatious. No time to grasp more. Xiating before me suddenly collapses straight down, fainting from the fever. While he's out cold, I quickly recite the calming verses a dozen times to quell the restlessness in my heart. Only then does the turmoil subside. Then I hurry next door to fetch Uncle Li to help move him. Not long after, Xiating woke up. His first instinct upon waking is to check if he still has his clothes on. I'm not surprised by Xiating's reaction. After all, I have a history of raiding his clothes. I reassure him, don't worry, Uncle Li from next door moved you here. I'm self-aware, with my body constitution, if I comes into contact with Xiating, I won't be able to contain myself. Surely, I'd succumb to the strong or 18 desires. Looks like I'll have to keep my distance from him in the future. Xiating, however, seems unsettled, gazing at me in astonishment. He never expected he could faint in front of me and wake up untouched. Xiating seems lost in thought. She appears different somehow, still looking radiant, yet her gaze is chilly, full of a disdainful detachment. I pretend nothing happened and offer some comforting words to Xiating, but his eyes once again brim with disdain, thinking that I must be putting on an act. I pay no mind, just hypocritically tell him, today, I realized, Child Xia has been pushed to such a state by me. I was wrong. Child Xia, rest assured, forcing you to marry me wasn't my wish. Our marriage will be postponed for a while. When the time is right, I'll find a way for my father to break off our marital engagement. I won't make things difficult for you. Now suddenly playing with the role of good person, so you no longer want to marry me? Xiating asks icily. I respond with resignation, Child Xia, you possess unparalleled talent. You shouldn't be stuck here in this little village because of me. It was my overreach before. I hope you'll give me some time. You'll see my sincerity soon. Xiating is surprised once more. In his mind, I'm just a babbling fool, muttering embarrassing things. I'm not expecting Xiating to believe in me so quickly, nor do I wait for his response. I simply turn and head home. Thick snow had accumulated on the road. Suddenly, I tripped over something while walking and fell into the snow. I was bewildered, clearing the thin layer of snow beside me, then discovered that it's a person I stumbled upon. The person was lying there, dressed lavishly but covered in injuries, collapsed in the snow of this remote village. Probably he's pursued by enemies, or perhaps a murderer who failed either way. It's something I, a village girl, can't afford to get involved in. Pretending I hadn't seen anything, I intended to keep walking, but then suddenly remembered something. I searched through the person's belongings, and sure enough, found a jade pendant carved with a dragon pattern at his waist. It was him, the main villain in the original book, Xiating's lifelong rival, both foe and friend, the future leader of the entire Yan territory, Duan Jiu, the king of Yan. I hurried back home, grabbed a rope, and looped it under the man's armpits, dragging the villain King Yan towards my little wooden house. In the original plot, it wasn't me who saved him, but the male lead, Xiating. Afterward, Afterward, the two became sworn brothers. King Yan lost his memory due to the injury after living with Xia Ting in the Peach Blossom Village for 2 months. He suddenly woke up one day and regained his memory. At the same time, he forgot everything that happened in the village during those months, including his brotherly bond with Xia Ting. However, owing to the life-saving favor, the King Yan still rewarded Xia Ting with 100 gold bullion, but he was full of disdain for the impoverished scholar. Xia Ting couldn't bear this. He rejected the gold and silver offered by the King Yan, refusing to be degraded with gold like this. But I don't feel insulted at all. I would be so glad if he could insult me with 100 gold bullion. With this money, I would not have to worry about my living. Even if my brother and I spent recklessly every day, we couldn't exhaust such wealth. I wouldn't have to endure hardships for the rest of my life. I could just relax and enjoy myself. With these thoughts in mind, I summoned infinite strength and dragged Duanjiu into the hut. I tended to the man's wounds, and then noticed something had lifted from a corner of his face, revealing a human skin-like mask underneath. Carefully, I lifted the mask, and beneath it, although pale, but its elegant bone structure, he looked like a sculpted figure, with each feature perfectly crafted. The man before me had a face of impeccable beauty, but he is also the one who overturned the entire Great Xia dynasty, fighting from Yen territory all the way to the capital, burying 100,000 Ro captives alive, razing 2 cities and killing several 100,000 innocent civilians. He wiped out all his relatives and ascended the throne, covered in blood. Yet, 3 years after his coronation, he died suddenly. Yen King Duanjiu. Looking at the man before me, my special constitution began acting up again, as if I were being bewitched. I reached out and touched his eyes, only to feel a tremor in my fingers. That tingling sensation returned. I shouldn't do this. I quickly withdrew my hand, swallowed hard, but found myself unconsciously staring at the man's lips again. My mind began producing inappropriate thoughts. The man's lips were warm and soft, looks very appealing. Just as I was getting lost in him, he suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, I felt a dizzying sensation, and before I knew it, I was pushed down by the man. One of his hands gripped my throat tightly, while the other restrained my flailing arms. With a fierce expression, it seemed like he really was going to strangle me. I felt suffocated. However, something embarrassing happened. Clearly, it was a life or death moment, yet I emitted a moan of enjoyment, and my whole body began trembling with extreme pleasure. This damned constitution. Luckily, the injured man fainted and soon he slumped onto the warm bed. Then he passed out again. I sits alone in the corner, contemplating all types of philosophy in the world. Finally, I calmed myself down and the restlessness in me faded away. Before I could even catch my breath, I saw Duanjiu opening his eyes and sitting up again. Instinctively, I wanted to escape, but Duan seemed even more scared than I was. He curled up into a ball, trembling in the corner of the warm bed. Shivering? Why is he acting like this? I approached him, tilted my head to observe him. He heard me approaching, shivered instinctively. His expression was like that of a puppy, tears rolling from his eyes, falling one by one, directly onto my heart. Heaven knows, I adore cute guys like this the most. The more he cry, the more I like it. Why are you crying? I didn't bully you. You were the one choking me just now, and I didn't even cry. Duanjiu's beautiful hands clenched tightly on his own legs, his body trembling. I'm sorry, sister. He looked me straight in the eyes, his eyes reddening, then he threw himself into my arms. Perhaps it was the sadness in his embrace that affected me. My special constitution surprisingly didn't take effect. Was this little pitiful thing really the future great demon king? I comforted him for a while, and then we fell asleep together. The next morning, as soon as I woke up, I saw Duanjiu staring at me. His gaze was innocent, and he asked me in confusion, "Who are you? Don't you remember?" Duanjiu shook his head. Then what do you remember? After trying to recall, he painfully covered his head. I don't remember anything. Great, I thought to myself. Now I can just make things up as I please. I pretend to be almost crying and said, "Oh my god, you don't even remember me." He seemed about to get a headache again. Then I quickly added, "You're a hunter. When you were hunting in the mountains, you bumped your head. Don't worry. Maybe if you bump it again, you'll remember." Then who are you? His gaze gradually softened like water. He leaned closer and said, "Are you my wife?" No, the antagonist seems so needy for a family. Last time a brother, now a wife. Upon hearing my words, Duanjiu looks utterly disappointed. But then I thought, anyway, in 2 months, Duanjiu will forget everything about me and about this place. For these 2 months, I can do as I please. So what if he becomes my husband? I didn't force him. He's handsome, and I don't lose out either. So I lifted his chin. He looks at me, and I said with a smile, "But don't be disappointed. You've been my purchased foster husband since youth." When Duanjiu heard me say this, his smile became dazzlingly radiant. He asked, "What should I call you then?" "My name is Liu Hun. You can call me Hun." He propped himself up on the bed and leaned towards me again, calling out my name, Hun. Goosebumps rose all over me. How could it be so ambiguous and affectionate? Duanjiu then asked me, "What's my name then?" "You haven't told me yet." I glanced at the heavy snow outside and casually gave him a new name. "Your surname is Duan. Your name is Long. Because the day you came to my house, it was also snowing heavily. Is this the name you gave me?" "Yes. Of course my foster husband's name should be given by me." "How? Don't you like it?" "I'll like any name you give me." Duanjiu smiled innocently, looking bright and gorgeous. My heart uncontrollably skipped a beat. How should I do? He is such a good guy. Suddenly, I felt a twinge of guilt in my heart. I quickly got up and went to cook for him. Little did I know, after I left, Duanjiu's eyes, however, grew dark. He surveyed the room and murmured softly, "Little liar."